My 13-year-old niece giggled. Grandma said, if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice, while opening the $1,200 laptop I bought her. All 25 guests laughed except me. I smiled and, with 2 clicks, I shut down every card payment and account they used. That night, I left for good with a single suitcase. Inside the house, I left behind a box. Inside that box, they found. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. I'd love it if you could share in the comments which city or country you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let's begin our story together. For years, I was their safety net, their emergency fund, their free therapist. But if I wasn't actively doing something for them, I might as well have been a ghost. I'm Ethan, 32 years old. And for most of my adult life, I was the one they called, the one who fixed things, the one who paid, the one who was always there, a silent, steady presence in the background of their lives. I used to think family was built on love and mutual respect. Turns out, sometimes it's just a ledger where only one person is making deposits. My family, my mother mainly, had perfected the art of withdrawal without ever feeling the need to contribute. For as long as I could remember, I was cast in the role of the reliable provider. Growing up, I saw the financial struggles, the stress on my mother's face, and maybe deep down, a part of me felt responsible. I started working young, saving what little I could, always with a vague idea of helping out. That vague idea quickly became a concrete reality the moment I got my first decent job out of college. It wasn't asked for directly at first, just hints, stories of unexpected bills. Then it became requests framed as temporary needs. Just until I get back on my feet. Just this one time, honey. But the one time never ended. It became a steady stream of payments, covering everything from utility shut-off notices I handled with shaking hands in my tiny apartment, to car repairs for my sister's beat-up sedan, to making up the difference on their mortgage just to help them out during a tough time. I paid off that mortgage for them eventually, signing the final check with a strange mix of pride and a hollow ache, hoping that would be enough, that kind of help would finally earn me a place in their hearts beyond just being the walking ATM. Didn't. Every dollar I sent their way felt like a brick added to a wall that kept me from building my own life. Delayed buying a home. Postponed travel dreams. A savings account that stayed stubbornly modest because their needs always seemed more urgent, more dire. The anxiety of getting their calls. Hearing mom's voice tighten, knowing it meant money was needed, became a constant low-grade hum in my life. My shoulders felt permanently hunched, carrying a weight that wasn't mine alone but that they were happy for me to bear. It wasn't just financial. I was the designated problem solver, the listener for complaints about distant relatives, the mediator in petty squabbles. But my own life, my own stresses, my own needs, they barely registered. Show moments where I needed support and received none. When I went through a tough breakup, needing just an ear, Mom somehow turned the conversation to her own unrelated stress about a leaky faucet she hoped I could pay to fix. My pain was invisible. Their inconvenience was paramount. All I ever wanted was to feel like I belonged, not just like I was a convenient resource. I kept hoping, irrationally, that one time they'd look at me and say, thank you. Or better yet, we love you, not just what you do for us. This desperate craving for their approval and recognition was my blind spot. The reason I stayed on that ledger for so long. My sister, bless her, wasn't malicious in the same way Mom was, more passively entitled, comfortably nestled under Mom's wing. And then there was my niece, Chloe, 13 years old, bright, quick-witted, and increasingly a mini version of her grandmother in her ability to cut with a smile. Mom had a way of making her problems feel like my personal responsibility, a duty I could never fully repay. She also had a way of using others, particularly Chloe, as proxies for her own cruelties or demands. I'd noticed Chloe in recent years repeating things that clearly came from Grandma. Little digs about my quiet nature. Comments about my life not being as exciting as theirs. The niece's later comment wasn't out of character. It was something she'd likely heard or been coached on before, perhaps in less direct ways. A seed planted and nurtured. Ahead lay another obligatory family gathering, the annual summer barbecue at Mom's house. The familiar tension of forced cheerfulness always hung in the air like the sticky humidity of a Georgia summer. I felt the usual dread mixed with that persistent irrational flicker of hope that this time would be different. It always felt off. A performance everyone was tired of but couldn't stop. This particular barbecue felt heavier though. A sense of finality I couldn't place until it happened. The cracks in the facade had been showing for a while, growing wider, more obvious. The slow burn was igniting. There was the time I'd helped them with a major car repair bill, thousands of dollars. Money I'd been saving for a down payment on a small condo. I transferred it, feeling the familiar mix of resignation and weary satisfaction that I could help. The next week, Mom casually mentioned she was planning a non-essential girls' trip with my sister and Chloe, talking about how much they needed a break. She talked about destinations, shopping, expecting me to cover some of it, just for fun money. My jaw clenched so hard I thought I'd cracked a tooth. I managed to quiet. I just gave you several thousand for the car, Mom. I can't swing a vacation right now, she sighed dramatically. Oh Ethan, always so practical. We were just joking, mostly. The word mostly hung in the air. It wasn't a joke. It was a test. And I'd failed by not immediately opening my wallet wider. Emotional exclusion was another tool. Trying to say no to anything big or small was like holding up a mirror to their behavior and they hated it. Family helps family, Ethan. What kind of son are you? Mom's words like little daggers, sharp and precise, aimed right at that vulnerable spot of wanting to belong. Once they went to a popular local festival, something I bought tickets for everyone last year. This year, they just went. I saw photos pop up on Facebook. Photos of them laughing, eating, having a great time, on my profile where we were all connected, photos taken at an event I'd introduced them to, enjoyed with them before and financially supported in the past. I wasn't even invited. My stomach twisted into knots looking at the forced smiles. The deliberate exclusion. It wasn't an oversight. It was a message. Trying to talk about it, trying to express the hurt was met with classic gaslighting. When I finally tried to tell Mom how their comments and actions made me feel, how invisible I felt, she just sighed, a long-suffering sound that conveyed I was being difficult. "You're always so dramatic, Ethan. It was just a joke. You need thicker skin." And everyone else chuckled like my genuine concerns were just adorable quirks. Mom had a specific phrase she'd use whenever I expressed discomfort or hesitated to immediately comply with a request. "Don't make things difficult, Ethan," said with a tight smile, a slight tilt of the head. It wasn't a question. It was a command wrapped in a passive-aggressive bow. That was her signature. And I saw that phrase, that look, that tone appearing more and more in Chloe as she got older. The way she'd ask for something expensive then add, "It's not a big deal, is it, Uncle Ethan, unless you want to make things difficult." My internal monologue became a constant argument. Was I overreacting? Was this normal family stuff? Was I just too sensitive like Mom said? The physical toll was increasing. Sleep became elusive. My mind raced with scenarios, conversations I'd never have the courage to start. My body felt heavy, weighted down by unspoken resentment and the sheer effort of maintaining the facade. But beneath the confusion and the pain, a seed of something else was growing. A quiet, hard resentment. A dawning realization that this wasn't love. It was a conditional transaction and I was being exploited. It hadn't solidified into action yet, but the anticipation for the barbecue felt different. Not just dread but a flicker of dark anticipation, a sense that something had to give. I was going, yes, performing my duty. But maybe, just maybe, this would be the last time the show ran exactly as they expected. The barbecue was exactly as anticipated, yet subtly off-key. The smell of charcoal mixed with overly sweet barbecue sauce hung in the air thick and cloying. Around 25 guests milled about in Mom's backyard, family, a few neighbors who only ever saw the polished social mask. There was the forced cheerfulness, the loud laughter that felt hollow, the superficial conversations. I made the rounds, offering quiet hellos, accepting a plate of food I didn't really want. I saw Mom holding court, her usual charming self, the perfect hostess. I saw my sister laughing a little too loudly. I saw Chloe bouncing with 13-year-old energy, eyeing a pile of brightly wrapped gifts on a side table. And then the moment. It was time for Chloe's birthday gifts. My sister ushered Chloe over to the table. The pile wasn't huge but one box stood out, flat, sleek, clearly electronic. My gift, the $1,200 laptop Chloe had been dropping heavy hints about for months. Hints that Mom had relayed with her signature. Chloe would just be over the moon. Ethan. It would really help with school and other things. You don't want to make things difficult, do you? Chloe eagerly grabbed my box. She tore off the paper with a flourish, revealing the sleek, recognizable logo. A collective murmur went through the small crowd gathered around the table. "Ooh, a laptop," someone said. Chloe beamed. She opened the lid, her eyes wide for a second with genuine excitement. Then she looked up, looked directly at me and the smile shifted. It wasn't innocent 13-year-old joy anymore. It was something sharper, something I recognized from her grandmother's playbook. She held up the laptop slightly, her gaze locked onto mine and she giggled. It wasn't a sweet, childish giggle. It was a knowing, slightly cruel sound. And she delivered the line, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear clearly over the general chatter. Grandma said, "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." The sound cut through the air like a physical blow. For a split second, there was silence. Then the laughter erupted. All 25 guests, a wave of sound washing over me. My sister chuckled. My aunts, my uncles, even some cousins I thought were okay. They all laughed and I looked at my mother. Her eyes met mine across the small space. And she was smirking. A look of pure satisfaction, of validation. Her message delivered by her chosen messenger, ratified by the chorus of family laughter. In that split second, the pain hit me. The searing, devastating pain of years of sacrifice, of yearning for acceptance, culminating in this public, brutal dismissal. My chest tightened as if someone had wrapped barbed wire around my lungs. My vision narrowed until only their laughing faces remained. It wasn't just a throwaway line from a kid. It was a message delivered exactly as intended and embraced by the entire group. This was the truth of how they saw me, invisible, expendable. This was my rock bottom. The moment the last fragile thread of hope snapped. But instead of breaking, something inside me solidified. The pain didn't shatter me. It hardened. The fog of obligation lifted. I saw them, not as family who occasionally messed up, but as a unit that actively benefited from my pain and invisibility, who celebrated my perceived insignificance. And in that moment, standing there bathed in the sound of their mocking laughter, I was done. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene that would have been giving them the reaction they expected, the drama they thrived on. No. A strange icy calm settled over me. I offered a small, chilling smile back at my mother. Then subtly, I reached for my phone in my pocket. Shielded by the crowd still chortling about the joke, I navigated to my banking and credit card apps. My fingers moved swiftly, surely. Account settings, transfers, linked accounts, bill pay, stop payment orders, close account, cancel card. 2 clicks, then another and another. Each tap was a year of sacrifice, a moment of pain, a silent plea for love that went unheard. With 2 clicks, the safety net was gone. With a few more, the financial lifelines I'd extended, the ones they relied on for everything from mortgage payments to utility bills to the very cards in their wallets linked to my accounts for emergencies, were severed irrevocably. I stayed for a short while longer, standing on the periphery, nursing a soda, watching them. The laughter now sounded hollow, distant. They were celebrating my insignificance, completely unaware of the financial earthquake I had just unleashed from my pocket. I felt utterly detached, observing them like specimens under a microscope. They were so confident in their power, in my predictable role. It was almost fascinating. I left quietly about an hour later, offering a simple "had a great time," thanks to my sister who barely looked up from showing off the laptop. No one tried to stop me. No one really noticed I was gone until much later, just as Chloe's comment had predicted. I drove straight to my apartment. The silence in the car, a stark contrast to the recent noise. The familiar space felt safe, a sanctuary I'd almost neglected because I was always prioritizing their space. That night, I packed a single suitcase. It wasn't a lot of stuff, just clothes, essentials, my laptop and a few photo albums that actually contained pictures where I looked genuinely happy. Pictures not taken at family gatherings. Everything I truly needed fit into one small bag. The rest belonged to a life I was leaving behind. Before I left my apartment for good, I was going to stay at a friend's for a while, figure things out. I made a stop at Mom's house. The lights were still on. The party had wound down. I let myself in with the key I still had. The house was quiet now, smelling faintly of stale barbecue smoke and leftover perfume. The space felt alien. Every family photo on the wall, a reminder of the narrative I was excluded from. I walked into the living room. On the coffee table, amidst discarded napkins and empty glasses, I placed a small, sturdy cardboard box I brought. Inside, I had carefully packed years of receipts, scans and printouts documenting mortgage payments, car notes, utility bills, insurance premiums, countless smaller expenses and yes, the receipt for the $1,200 laptop. On top of the stack, I placed a single folded piece of paper. On it, I had written just one line: "Let's see how you manage without me." I looked around the room one last time. At the smiling faces in the photos, faces who had laughed at my invisibility hours earlier. At the comfortable furniture I'd helped pay for. At the walls I'd painted. And then I turned and walked out. I closed the door quietly behind me, locking it from the outside. Stepping out into the cool night air, a profound silence enveloped me. The weight that had been crushing my shoulders for years was gone. There was grief, a deep sorrow for the family I'd always wanted but never had. There was fear of the unknown, of the inevitable storm that was coming. But beneath it all, there was an exhilarating, terrifying freedom. The storm hit the next morning. My phone began to buzz relentlessly around 8 a.m. The first few messages were confused, annoyed. "My credit card isn't working. Ethan, fix it. The power bill notification says it wasn't paid. Did you forget?" Then they escalated, panic creeping in. "What did you do? The internet's cut off. My card's being declined everywhere." Then came the calls. My sister first. Her voice high-pitched and frantic. "Ethan, what's going on? None of the cards linked to your account are working. I can't buy gas." I didn't answer. I was staying at my friend Mark's place, sipping coffee, watching the sunrise, the first sunrise in years I didn't wake up with a knot of financial anxiety in my stomach. Next was Mom. Her voice, usually so controlled, was shaking with fury. "Ethan, what is the meaning of this? My cards are being declined. The cable's off. What did you do?" I took a deep breath. It was time. I didn't yell. My voice was calm, steady, utterly devoid of the usual eagerness to please. "Mom," I said, my voice unfamiliar even to my own ears. "Check the coffee table. There's a box." And I hung up. Less than 10 minutes later, the text started coming in. A firestorm of capital letters and exclamation points. "You monster. How could you? We're your family. Your mother is in tears. You can't do this to us. Put everything back now." The phrase "you can't do this to family" was repeated multiple times. Their ultimate weapon of manipulation. Their attempts to gaslight and guilt trip me were in overdrive. Mom called back, her voice dripping with false tears now, accusing me of abandoning them, of being cruel and heartless. "After everything we've done for you," she wailed, a classic deflection. The same people who had laughed at the idea of me disappearing hours earlier were now terrified by the reality of my absence. Their panic was palpable, and for the first time, I felt a cold hard satisfaction replacing the years of hurt. My response remained simple, factual and utterly detached. I didn't engage in the emotional drama. My communication was brief, often via text or email. "The box explains everything," I repeated to anyone who contacted me. "You made it clear you don't need me. Now you can prove it." I blocked numbers when the abuse became too much. The financial crisis they faced was very real. Bills bounced. Late fees piled up. Services were disconnected. They scrambled, realizing just how much they had relied on me for literally everything essential. They tried to get credit in their own names, but their history was poor, built on my payments, not their own responsible management. I had anticipated the legal threats. Mom mentioned consulting a lawyer about my abandonment. This is where my preparation and support system came in. I had already contacted an attorney, Mark's cousin Sarah Jenkins, smart, no nonsense, specializing in family law and financial disputes. She listened patiently to my story, reviewing the evidence I'd compiled. Not just the receipts but records of transfers, emails confirming payments, even scanned copies of those shut-off notices I'd handled. This is where the first twist solidified, turning my quiet departure into strategic power. The evidence in the box wasn't just proof of payment. It included printouts of old emails exchanged years ago when Mom needed a large sum for a pressing debt. In those emails, she had explicitly promised that if I covered this debt, she would put my name on the deed to a small rental property the family owned, ensuring I had a tangible asset for my contribution and a future income stream. She never did. She took the money, paid the debt and then brushed off my inquiries about the deed with vague excuses or her signature phrase, "Don't make things difficult, Ethan." The evidence proved not just my financial support but a clear documented breach of promise, a deliberate act of withholding something I was owed. When their lawyer sent a blustering letter implying I had a continued obligation or had defrauded them somehow, Sarah's response was swift and precise. It outlined every payment I had made, dating back years, totaling a sum far exceeding any reasonable filial duty, and it included the emails about the rental property deed, presenting irrefutable proof of Mom's broken promise and deceit. Their threats of suing me for abandonment fell flat when my lawyer presented them with the email where Mom promised me partial ownership in exchange for the down payment. I told Mark later. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Their legal maneuvering ended abruptly. The family's attempts to rally others against me backfired too. They started spreading their version of events to mutual relatives and friends, painting me as cruel, selfish and ungrateful after they had done so much for me. But I had an unexpected ally. My cousin Sarah, the lawyer's cousin, the one who had sent me the quiet message of support, wasn't just validating me emotionally. She saw their public complaining and lies. This was the second twist, the moment of realistic social justice. Sarah didn't make a huge scene, but she started quietly countering their narrative among shared contacts. To aunts who complained about my heartlessness, she'd simply say, "Did you know Ethan paid off their mortgage, and I've seen the emails where Mom's name promised him a share of the rental property she never gave him?" To friends who heard about the abandonment, she'd calmly mention the decades of financial support Ethan provided, culminating in the hurtful comment at the barbecue. She didn't need to shout. She just presented factual glimpses of the truth behind their mask. The impact wasn't a courtroom drama but a shift in social perception. Their carefully constructed image of a struggling but loving family wronged by the selfish son began to crumble among people who knew both sides. The gaslighting was exposed by calm facts. Their desperation became less pitiable, more pathetic. They faced consequences, not just financially but reputationally. Their mask had cracked and the true faces of entitlement and ingratitude were visible to more than just me. My path to healing wasn't instantaneous. But it was steady. I started therapy, processing years of ingrained obligation and emotional manipulation. I learned to set boundaries, not just with them but in other areas of my life. The quiet in my new apartment was unnerving at first after years of their constant demands and dramas. But then I realized it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I focused on my own goals, my own needs, building a life that was truly mine. Mark and Sarah became my chosen family. People who saw me, valued me and supported me unconditionally. The relationship with my biological family, it exists only on the periphery now. They occasionally send a tentative text, usually hinting at a need. I respond rarely, briefly and with no financial commitment. The dynamic is irrevocably broken. The pain of losing the family I'd always longed for still aches. Sometimes a phantom limb, but it's a dull ache now. Looking back, that moment at the barbecue, Chloe's cruel, rehearsed giggle was the catalyst. It was the culmination of years of being the invisible man and the spark that ignited my liberation. They thought I wouldn't be noticed if I disappeared. They were wrong. My disappearance left a void, a very expensive, very inconvenient void that forced them to notice exactly how much I mattered. Not as a person perhaps, but certainly as a resource. The lesson I learned was a painful one but vital. My worth isn't tied to how much I give or how much I'm needed in a dysfunctional way. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary for self-preservation. And true family isn't defined by blood but by mutual respect, love and the courage to truly see each other. Inside that box, they found the truth they never wanted to see. The cost of taking someone for granted, documented proof of their deceit and the irreversible consequences of finally pushing the invisible man until he walked away. Have you ever had to walk away from a relationship that was costing you your peace? What does family truly mean to